Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll get started now. So, welcome everybody. This is the Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group webinar on future flood resilience for Chesterfield, and we're very pleased. We've got two Environment Agency staff here tonight. Richard Walker is going to do a presentation, which you can see before you. Richard is Adaptation Developmental Program Manager for the Environment Agency, and he's currently working with our regional mayor. And then Jackie Lowe is Flood Advisor and Natural Flood Management Lead for South Yorkshire and North East Derbyshire. And she's just going to, after Richard's spoken, she's going to briefly outline emerging plans for natural flood management. And this is being put on by Chesterfield and District Flood Action Group, which is a support group for flooded people. And we're also trying to, press for measures to reduce or prevent flooding and prepare people for the future flood risks, which are inevitably coming due to climate change. But hopefully, you're all on Steph's mailing list. But if you're not and you want to be, please get in touch, and I'll put Steph, if you could put your email in the chat, that would be great. So without further ado, we're gonna run till about 8:15. So Richard will present, Jackie will say a few words, and then we'll open it up for questions, and we'll finish at 8:15 prompt, and you can then enjoy the rest of this lovely evening. So thank you very much, Richard. Welcome, and would you like to get started on your presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and good evening. I can't actually see any of you. Hopefully, you can see my slides, and that's fine. Thanks for joining this session. It's kind of informal, bit consultative. It's about inclusion of proposals for the River Hipper flood alleviation scheme within this wider regional program. The program itself has been developed. We developed it within the East Midlands area and with our Yorkshire colleagues, Jackie and Dave Oates, who you may have met, may have talked to, will connect at some point. And it's a response, really, a strategic response to the impacts of Storm Babette. And we focused on four communities, the four most impacted communities. And Chesterfield fits into that envelope. Appreciate that it involves for yourselves a consideration wider than Chesterfield itself. But we think it's relevant, and it's relevant to engage and consult with you in the way we have with groups for the other locations, because it provides a means, a mechanism by which we can secure the funding, well, at least half of the funding that's required to afford developing a potential flood alleviation scheme for the HIPAA, as I think you've some awareness of. So that's the reason why. And I suppose I'd also like to convey something of the adaptive challenges that we more broadly face, not just in Chesterfield, but with many comparable locations and communities, and the fresh approach that's been required to actually seek to respond appropriately and seek to drive forward potential alleviation and resilience schemes for the most impacted communities. So I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to run through these slides quite quickly. Would very much welcome any questions, and we'll seek to answer those afterwards. My detailed knowledge of the actual HIPAA schemes a little limited, and of your context. So if I don't quite get the geography, please forgive me. All right, let's move these forward. Okay, so the starting point for this is understand something of the increasing flood resilience problems that a number of communities, particularly post-coal catchment communities, have suffered much worse flooding, more regular flooding, and increasingly widespread, particularly over the last 20 to 25 years. It seems to have escalated almost exponentially, not quite. And our challenge at the moment is that traditional approaches that we've used, which have tended to involve physical hard defenses, the space to build those higher or longer or bigger, um, is we've really run out. Our problem is that, and as the picture alludes to, um, there's no room left underneath the bridges and the culverts. Um, there's no air draft left. There's no room to build any higher. So we need to move on. We need to find fresh approaches that deliver resilience for the most impacted communities. Um, this definitely applicable as well to Chesterfield. So why is this? Well, obviously, there's an extent to which this is climate change driven, but there are also a number of other factors at play. One of the greatest, and it's interrelated with climate change, is that we have a compaction and loss of filtration in many areas through surfaces. So this slide basically shows you that you can be losing a very significant, even up to 5 times the amount of water that would infiltrate into the ground when you move to highly compacted arable agricultural use, and also in the most extreme urban contexts, which lack green space, tree cover, and ground cover. Um, so these are one of the reasons why we've seen such an increase. Um, there was a kind of interest from the group in including this. It didn't seem quite so relevant to Chesterfield itself, but the reference point on the bottom is, which is Avenue Coking Works, which I was involved in many years ago, um, which is exceptional in terms of how it's been remediated, i.e., its inclusion of flood alleviation washland. Our issue now is that effectively Chesterfield needs the equivalent of another one. Um, but this slide basically provides a bit of detail about why 75 years ago, Notts and Derbyshire coalfields producing 35 million tons of coal, and to do so, and particularly transport it, they were consuming 12 million meters of local water supplies per annum. Um, Now, what we're seeing is that as part of the early cutting edge of the UK's transition away from coal to low carbon, some of the effects of this are starting to increase and exacerbate climate change, which it's a transition to address. So we're seeing the potential impact of mine water levels rising, but also some of the remediations of sites um, haven't always included sustainable drainage. So hopefully that gives you something of a picture of why we've got this increasing problem. And as the flood events increase, so do the social impacts. So during Storm Babette across East Midlands, we had 3,170 properties internally flooded. And many of the worst impacted places, some of the most vulnerable communities and local economies, and many of them have been hit multiple times. Um, Such frequent flooding reinforces poverty, cycle of deprivation, marginalizing, it damages health and well-being, and constrains potential. So it kind of has an effect of excluding people and places from contributing to and benefiting from sustainable growth. Hence the interface with EMCCA in particular, who are part of their role and remit is to deliver sustainable growth for the region. So I'm an economist originally by background, so reasonably easy for me to do some quick and dirty sums about how much are these flood impacts actually costing. So for just our 4 priority places, so alongside Chesterfield, Worksop, South Derby, and the Erewash Valley, um, suffered an estimated £650 million worth of flood damages in current values over the past 25 years. And without change, without us securing these funds and developing schemes, as is proposed in Chesterfield and these other locations, they're likely to suffer at least a similar £650 million of the damages by 2050. So that would be bad enough. But what it also does is it constrains the potential of those places and of communities, of local economies and businesses. Um, and based on quite a number of schemes we've driven and developed and funded through their sustainable growth potential and the enabling of sustainable growth, which is about avoiding inappropriate development as well as enabling where it is appropriate. Um, our rough estimates suggest there's around £720 million worth of lost growth that would occur in the next 25 years. So there's quite a set of drivers for addressing and delivering this. And the slight frustration that we have at this point in time is that we have ministerial announcements, and there is a very significant potential sum of £10.5 billion for the future flood investment program, with a set of changes to how those schemes are funded and prioritised. But our dilemma, our challenge in our current situation is that unfortunately none of that money and funding is available from DEFRA to develop these schemes, to develop these cases, places that aren't already in the running. So if we don't seek and secure funding from other sources like EMCCA, it's likely that these most impacted communities won't be able to progress and get and secure funding to deliver schemes, not only just not starting this decade, but potentially running quite a long way into the next decade. Um, so this is why we developed this program. Nobody really asked us to. We've done a lot of it on a shoestring, because we need to be able to drive potential new solutions for places that are most impacted. Okay, so that's what we've done. The nature of the schemes we've developed have something in common, and they are based on some of the things I've already outlined, which is the potential of harnessing the historic and existing water and transport, in a sense, the remnant post-coal infrastructure, as well as the impacts that coal had in altering and changing the topography of landscape. Lisa will probably come on to a little later some of the non-coal area opportunities in the uplands of the catchment to create other complementary interventions. So if I just flick us on, so this slide just gives you a little bit of detail about why it is that there's bits of transport infrastructure and water infrastructure that seems to congregate and, in a sense, collect the water for obvious reasons where you need to use it for canals and for water supplies and for wastewater treatment, but also that railway lines, for similar reasons, both run to where the coal abstraction was, but they tended to follow canal and river courses because they offered the easiest gradients up and down. So a lot of what we've been looking at and developing new potential solutions with is working with transport and other water managers, particularly in the other locations, the Canal and Rivers Trust. In the context of Chesterfield, there are the development of the project here so far has worked on the basis of effectively digging a new water balancing facility, but we'll also be looking at how much and to what degree we might be able to avoid that or minimize it by utilizing some of the existing remnant reservoir spaces within the catchment, but also complementing it by other natural flood risk management measures. Right. So I don't think you want to know all about how we drive this in terms of, the mayor said when she was elected that she'd do stuff around flood resilience. There are certain duties under bits of legislation that we're able to push through on. Um, we're able to identify how we previously used what are called discretionary funds from the Department of Communities and Local Government. So effectively, the funding we're seeking through EMCCA comes through that route. And obviously, we wanted to make the case of securing EMPA's financial support and mayoral sponsorship. So obviously, that's on the slide too. So let me just very briefly outline some of these actual schemes. So obviously you'll be aware that there's a project here related to Chesterfield, but it gives you some idea there about what the flood damages in the past have been, um, what growth enabled growth, what the scale of that might be worth to Chesterfield, but also the area of water and wetland habitat that can potentially be created and enhanced as part of the scheme. So, we're looking at a mixed and very balanced approach. Yes, of course, we're looking to avoid those future flood damages, deliver flood resilience, but we're also looking to contribute and enable towards a more sustainable approach to economic development and growth, and ensure that where we are making those interventions, that they take every opportunity to create and enhance, deliver on biodiversity opportunities, and not have a biodiversity net loss. Um, the other schemes, I'm not gonna run through them in detail, but I'll just briefly flick through them. There's a scheme for Works Up. It's very canal orientated. We've got a very large and complex scheme to evolve right through the Erewash catchment. The again utilizes a whole array of post-coal landscape legacy, um, canal reservoirs, but also areas of washland that are largely rewild post-industrial sites. We can look to enhance their management and make them increase the capability to hold and store, but also to be able to manage not just the floodwater side of things, but also when there's water scarcity. Um, this was the slide that we first used in presenting to the mayor back in 2025, so what, a year and a bit ago. And it obviously does identify the impacts of Storm Babette in the context of Chesterfield. We've obviously used some simple visualizations, pictures that were accessible, but we've also utilized the relevant government ministers' visit to that's an Avenue, the Avenue Flood Storage Reservoir. I'll flick on because we're not doing much detail on those. So this is a scheme in Chesterfield. As you can see, it's also been, we're utilizing imagery of impacts of the bet. We're identifying what the similar kind of scale of properties that were flooded that we could protect, and also profiling how we'd be looking to do this in a strategic partnership with Canals and Rivers Trust and with the county councils. This is just to give you some idea of the Erewash Valley and something of the scale of wetland and water meadow space that we can enhance to deliver the scheme there. And this is a scheme in the south side of Derby where we're looking to utilise the remnant post-industrial landscape with its two oxbow lakes, but also a very large ex-coal railway siding at Cheddar. Okay. The final element of the scheme is around building the whole region's flood resilient social capital. So there's been some really good bits of work done in Nottingham. There's the Nottinghamshire. There's the opportunity to then run them in Derbyshire as well around flood wardens and road closure schemes, which can be actually really effective in minimising the impacts during events. Um, we've already set about working with flood action groups and developing flood action group in Worksop. We've made a set of connections and enhanced um, the engagement work with groups across the Erewash Valley, and hence why we were keen to come and just engage with yourselves. Right, I'm nearly done. So we then developed a business case for it. It worked out that we needed to find about £3.4 million to take forward these schemes. Now, this isn't to build the schemes. It's only the funding that we need to be able to do the feasibility work and to make the case for funding, because we'd envisaged these schemes being predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly funded from that £10.5 billion future government DEFRA funding part. We're not looking for the region to pay for this. We think the probable total cost of these schemes is it's certainly over £70 million. But what we need to do is do the feasibility work, develop and design the schemes, bring them back through consultative processes, and obviously make strong investment cases, secure that funding, deliver the schemes. I kind of almost, this is almost the worst thing I always have to say to groups we're engaging with is the shorter length of the timeline to getting a scheme to start delivering benefits for communities from this point forward is about 7 years. Now, hopefully, there is a lot of aspiration to speed some of these processes up, but I suspect that that is the sort of rational expectation to have about how long these schemes take to bring to fruition. Right. And for my final slide, which is really a bit hot off the press because we only got some of this information yesterday, and some of it revealed over the last 2, 3 weeks. But we've now had a written commitment from for the Mayor for the East Midlands, Menka, that she's supportive of the programme. I've quoted her here of a letter to us yesterday. And we've also had confirmation from EMCCA that the 3.4 million of funding to resource this program across the five projects across the 4 priority locations is included in their evolving investment plan for delivering this part of local growth fund. The East Midlands Combined County Authorities allocation was identified in the last autumn budget statement. So we knew it was there. We just needed to hold our nerve, twist arms, and encourage. And it seems like we've been successful in getting it included for now. That doesn't mean it's agreed. That doesn't mean we can assume it's definitely going to be there. There's decision making points for this. The final version of this plan for that funding will be endorsed by EMCCA's board in can't read, I think it's the 8th of June. And the priority projects that will be mobilized out of that program will get agreed by EMCCA's investment committee in July. I think that's me finished. I'm going to try and work out how to turn off the shared screen now because I haven't worked that out. I think it's that button. No, it's not.
Can't remember. Is it at the top of the screen? I can't remember unless she's sharing
I
it.
think it
Anyway,
might
thank you.
be. It's underneath the meeting is being recorded, but I think it's there.
Okay,
I
lovely.
got
Thank
it, got
you.
it, got it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Richard. Um, Before I just pass over to Jackie to say a few words on natural flood management, can I just so everybody's clear on what's being proposed for Chesterfield here is we've got a large flood storage scheme at the Avenue Works, which is on, the Rother. So you're looking at for something similar for the Hipper in Hollymoorside. And this is you're looking at the business. So you've got the money, hopefully, from the mayor to do a business plan so that you can then go and get funding from government to do the full flood storage scheme for the HIPAA. That's right, isn't
Yes.
it?
It would be the equivalent of the storage, but through potentially other ways rather than digging one fresh new hole in the ground. Avenue was opportunist. We got the opportunity to influence how the site was remediated. So they were going to just create a big hill. And we went, why don't you create a bowl and put a control structure at the end of it? It helped them get the funding.
Yeah. But yeah,
To
so it may not, it won't
yeah,
look
yeah,
like
yeah,
the
yeah.
Avenue, but it's the
I'm
same.
splitting hairs here, aren't I?
Yeah, but it's gonna slow the water down upstream that goes into the HIPAA that then.
Yes, that it will deliver the equivalent amount of holdback water by
Okay.
whatever means and mechanisms as we do the feasibility prove to be most cost beneficial.
Yeah. And just to say we can circulate your slides afterwards as well.
Sure,
Because there's quite a lot of information on there. So
absolutely.
the 220 homes that will be better protected, those are the ones along the Hipper that were flooded in Storm Babette, is that correct?
Uh, I, I believe that's the number of properties that were flooded in Storm Babette.
Along the Hipper, or just total?
The total number of properties
Okay.
during the Storm Babette event.
Yeah. Okay.
And obviously it would be that's where we're aiming.
Yeah.
We cannot guarantee at this stage that we can deliver a universal and hoped for level of protection to every single property in context, but we would, that's where we aim to get to.
Yeah. No, obviously you can't guarantee it, but sorry, just one final question. So if this gets through the board in June, you can then go and start the business case. The business case will take what, 1 or 2 years, and then you can get funding, and then it will take another
Yes.
5 years to build it. Is
We
that the
think it's
rough
a
time
two
scale?
years, 2 years to 2 years to get the business case through, we think.
Okay, and
We
then
don't
another,
know
and then
then we don't know when we do that, when we submit that, even if the business case is approved, it's then subject to when's the money going to be available in following years.
yeah,
And it's dependent upon the build schedule. I mean, some things are quicker to do than others. So that's why I was trying to give a wide time envelope of expectation.
yeah,
Obviously, we would aspire to doing it more quickly than that if it's feasible to do so and if the funding's made available. But it's far beyond our pay grades to crystal ball gaze that far into the future about what will happen.
yeah. Okay, no, appreciate that. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Richard.
My pleasure.
So we'll now pass on. So that's the large engineered scheme for Chesterfield, and obviously you're looking at Erewash and Derby and Worksop as well. So Jackie, you're the natural flood management person. So would you like to just give a quick update on what's happening in terms of the smaller natural schemes that can help in the meantime?
Yeah, will do. Thank you, Lisa. I couldn't see where to put my hand up, sorry, because we don't normally use Zoom. Um, I work in the area team that covers this area, and my focus is natural flood management, but my colleagues are working on the HIPAA flood alleviation scheme, so I can just qualify a couple of points because I'm a bit closer to it than Richard. Um, More properties than 220 flooded in Chesterfield and surrounding area in Storm Babette. Um, but the flood alleviation scheme that we're proposing to build would protect 220 of those, or around about that, better. So it is direct to that. And we're already partway through the business case because my colleagues have been very good at securing alternative funding or just other types of funding. So we've got through the first stage of the business case, which is the strategic outline case, and we've just moved into just starting the outline business case. But we need extra funding to get through to the full business case. So just to qualify, we have actually started on that, and we're quite a way through it, but quite a chunk of funding still needed, and that's where Richard's helping. So natural flood management. Reason that I wanted to come along and talk about it today is because we do have, as Richard said, other aspirations in the much wider than just the HIPAA catchment. So the whole of the upper Rother catchment, which covers this area around Chesterfield and down through Dronfield, Renishaw, and then the Rother obviously flows through to South Yorkshire. But I think people probably know on this call, but natural flood management provides an extra layer of protection above and beyond the traditional flood defences. And we are looking at this approach to really support the flood defences we've already got, and also, bolster the HIPAA flood alleviation scheme, the more traditional scheme that we're proposing. And luckily, there's just new rules for flood defence granting aid have just come into force in the beginning of April, and the application process for natural flood management projects has been streamlined, and natural flood management projects are very much more in the spotlight, and DEFRA are wanting us to move forward with those kind of projects. So we have already, with partners, all of our work is with partners. It's generally not just EA led, it's Derbyshire County Council, Catchment Rivers Trust and Derbyshire Wildlife Trust are very active in this area, and quite often it'll be them that brings in the bulk of funding and we add to it. So if you look at the Grassmoor Natural Flood Management Scheme, Catchment Rivers Trust brought in a big chunk of National Lottery Heritage funding, and along with several other funders, the Environment Agency were able to add to that and partner with that. So that's a good example of a natural flood management scheme that's already been delivered near to Chesterfield. What we would really like is to develop something similar for the HIPAA catchment, but there it's going to be more likely working with private landowners, which is quite different. So we've started, when I say we, all of the partners, not the Environment Agency particularly, but the Derbyshire Wildlife Trust and Catchment Rivers Trust have been doing quite a bit of engagement work to speak to landowners, start that conversation and do some feasibility work in the HIPAA catchment a bit further upstream than where we're proposing the HIPAA flood alleviation scheme is. I think people probably know, but I'll just cover, the point of natural flood management is to work with natural processes to store and slow the flow of water before it reaches the main watercourses. So it reduces peak flow during storms and therefore lets the river systems and our, the current flood assets that we've got cope better. But there's, as well as natural flood management, really the same interventions that we put in have many other benefits. So drought resilience, wildfire resilience, water quality improvements, obviously habitat, more wetland improvements, and just, resilient agriculture. If you look at how much that farmers are coping with high intense rainfall followed by longer dry drought periods, it's something that we need to move toward. So we're very lucky in this area that Derbyshire County Council bid for money a few years ago and managed to get funding for a natural flood management officer, and that officer is she's hosted by Catchment Rivers Trust, so we all work really closely together. So for the HIPAA catchment, the Environment Agency have already found funding to do a feasibility study for moorland restoration at the top of the HIPAA. And that's gone ahead this year, and the feasibility report is due shortly. And we're hoping, well, we're not hoping, sorry, we've secured funding to start the delivery of that moorland restoration at the head of the HIPAA next winter. If we can secure more funding, then we would like to do much more up there. We, as I said, Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, along with Catchment Rivers Trust, have been looking at the catchment around the HIPAA, in between that, more the farmed areas. And we've also, as all the partners have been looking at Homebrook Country Park, which is owned by Derbyshire County Council. So the Homebrook comes in, meets the HIPAA just quite close really to the confluence with the Rother. So it's much further down than a lot of the properties that were flooded, but it does reduce demand on the river system. And, if we were able to put more natural flood management in the country park up there. So they're not very firm plans yet. We were waiting for the new funding rules really, which they came in. We've just been getting the information for that during March and April. So watch this space. We're hoping to do, alongside Don Catchment Rivers Trust, hoping to do a visit to Grassmoor Country Park at some point over the summer, maybe early summer. So we'd like to publicise that through this group if you're interested in coming along and publicising it. No date for that yet. But the other thing is that the Environment Agency would quite like to do another trip to the Avenue, like we did last summer with your group, and invite members of the public to that at some point over the summer. We thought that worked quite well and we'd appreciate your help with that. So if anyone's got any questions after they've spoken to Richard or anything about natural flood management, just give me a shout. And we're not doing it all ourselves. We're mainly doing it through partners, but that's it. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, Jackie. Okay, well, we'll open it up for questions now. So if you go to the little heart react button at the bottom, there's a sort of hands up, raise hand one there. But I've just got a question for Jackie. First of all, very pleased to hear that you got the report for the moorland restoration. Is that something that the community, is that a sort of citizen science? Is that something that the community will get involved in, do you think? Or is that a bit like Grassmoor? Don Catchment River Trust had volunteers coming in to help. Is that the same for the moorland restoration project as well? Do you know?
It could be. I'm not project manager on that, so I don't know what they exactly they're planning to do, but the feasibility report's in, so we usually work through the Rivers Trust. I think on this occasion it's actually Trent Rivers Trust that's done the feasibility report for us because they were already working on quite a bit of the moorland up there and they've just extended their area into our catchment, into what we'd call the Don catchment, but it's the upper Rother catchment really before it reaches the Don. So yeah, I'm sure there will be opportunities to do that, but excuse me, that would be through Trent Rivers Trust. We do like to do that, to be honest, to give people, people feel more ownership. Definitely, if we did something in Homebrook Country Park in the future, we'd like to do something very similar to Grassmoor, really.
Okay, lovely. I'm sure. I mean, we'd be very pleased to sort of publicise all that and your Grassmoor and Avenue trips as well.
Great, thank you.
Any questions from anybody on anything? So I've got a question for for Richard on so I was a bit sort of intrigued really that you say that DEFRA's got this, however much was it, 10 billion for flood alleviation, but that doesn't include the money to develop the scheme. So I'm just wondering, well, how does anybody develop the schemes? Because generally, for other government funding, I know for highways funding, the money includes all the business development costs as well, I think. So I mean, obviously you've gone to EMCCA, but what does everybody else do in the rest of the country? Do they all just have to go cap in hand to, I don't know, the National Lottery or something? It just seems a mad way of doing things. And I know it's not your fault, but if you've got any insight into that.
I'll try my best. Um, there are a number of factors at play. One is that DEFRA and the Environment Agency only have a partial responsibility for resourcing the development costs of making a case for a capital project for the funding to deliver a change, an improved defence or reduce risk. DEFRA do hold the part on behalf of all of government and society within England for that. So there is a right of risk management authorities to seek and secure funding from that pot. But for instance, more than half of properties now identified as being at risk of flooding in the over 6 million across the country, more than half of them are at risk from surface water and secondary watercourses and drainage systems. And those are the responsibilities of local authorities, district councils, unitary authorities, or county councils. And in some contexts, they're also the responsibility of drainage boards. There's a degree to which water companies also have some responsibilities. So all those other risk management authorities actually are supposed to contribute into the costs of developing schemes. But as their budgets in many contexts have been squeezed, there's a very unequal and unlevel playing field in many ways in terms of how do communities at the sharp end of flood risk get their various local authorities to prioritize what are quite substantial costs and for which there isn't an absolute statutory duty. So that's the picture. It's just the reality. Now, it isn't that the Environment Agency always doesn't have budget, or DEFRA don't have budget to spend on, but there's been a huge backlog of underinvestment in existing flood risk assets. And to some extent, there's a decision being made by government that for a period of time, there will be a stronger onus, a bigger focus on spending on putting those existing defences into order so that they're reliable and fit for purpose. And there's a perfectly strong and rationale for doing that. It's for government to decide and DEFRA to decide such things. The decision made. In the case of the Chesterfield HIPAA scheme, half have already been secured. As Jackie alluded to, the market forwards are being funded by DEFRA through grant in.
Oh, sorry, we keep your microphone keeps cutting out there.
Because it was the other. Well, that's probably a good thing because you're recording me, and I'm not sure.
Go on, just say that again, Richard.
For this. So for the HIPAA scheme for Chesterfield, around £340,000 was allocated to the additional known costs of taking forward the first and second phases of business case development. Well, actually, 3 phases. What we needed to find was an additional 340,000, which is what we're seeking to the Chesterfield Flood Alleviation Scheme development work from EMCCA. So in many ways, Lisa, we are looking to fund this through the normal kind of mix. For the other 3 priority areas, we don't have any funding from DEFRA grant in aid to take them forward. So we are having to seek, in a sense, and we've had to push what resources we have internally into this process to help make it affordable. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that should be an expectation of government agencies, that when resources are tight for whatever reasons, you find ways to do it. Okay, and partnership is the key, as you know, as Jackie's alluded to. Our natural bent now is to do as much as we can around flood resilience and alleviation, but also in the broader picture of adaptation in partnership with others. It's the way to go.
Yeah. So it's just a massive game of catch up, really, after years of underinvestment and perfect storm with climate change. So,
well, if you think before 2011, and certainly before 2007, we had a system in which no communities, no local authorities, nobody else could influence the investment decision-making process around flood risks. It doesn't matter how much money you were willing to put on the table, you had no influence. You know, to an extent, DEFRA and the Environment Agency decided, and you know, having some plurality, allowing local authorities to bring forward schemes as well as the Environment Agency and water companies and contribute and partnership working enabling that to happen has many benefits. It's messy, it's complicated, but it's worth it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Right.
Chris has got his hand up and then Steph. So Chris,
Oh,
you go
great. Sorry, I
first.
can't see that. So do lead,
No, it's okay.
carry on.
Chris, do you want to unmute? It's right at the bottom left, the audio button, if you're struggling to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Yes, you click on the right
Yeah.
on the thing.
Yeah.
Sorry, at risk of um, overwhelming you both, my worry is the big picture where we're expecting sea level rise to go on, I think, for centuries. And even in this country, our net zero plans are not very good, and in the world, they're even worse. So, in the big picture, a how long are your flood defences likely to last if we get several meters? To be adequate if we get several meters of sea level rise, and more specifically, if the sea level goes up 1 meter, does that mean that the HIPAA goes up probably 1 meter and everything else rises, and it increases the flood risk proportionately? Thank you.
Who wants to have a go at that one?
I could perhaps suggest that one, we tend to build flood risk investment cases over the lifetime of how long that intervention will last. So if we do something in a traditional style using sheet piling, for instance, and concrete with a big carbon footprint, we tend to work on 100-year, 75 to 100-year timeline, and we make the case on that basis. And we also add in at least sensitivity testing it. And more recently, we build in a sense, the assurance that it will continue to deliver the benefits of protection for that time period on the basis of the IPCC's allowances and those translated through into DEFRA allowances for climate change. We sensitivity test it, it's called, out to the 4% temperature increase. So we have a reasonable level of uncertainty, is the way to put it, about the decisions we make now in relationship to the impacts of a warming world. But we can only take the best scientific evidence that we have available. We can then sensitivity test beyond that, and we can try and make the best possible decisions now. I mean, that's the nature of all adaptation decisioning, really. We can't make decisions about investments for where sea level will go in, say, 250 years, because we're not making decisions about things that will be here, that we expect to exist, or we're relying upon existing in that time frame only in the. So a lot of the natural flood risk management stuff, Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, we tend to work on much shorter time scales. Something like a 25, 30-year timeline is more realistic. Probably a lot of these schemes we're developing will have shorter timelines. Some of the partnership working shortens timelines. When you don't build rigid, heavily engineered defences, they tend to have shorter life expectancies, but they're cheaper to build. So we are kind of, I hope that doesn't sound too optimistic, but we generally take a professional view, which is we'll work with the climate change allowances on sea levels and changes in rainfall broadly around what the IPCC say, and then obviously we'll also use, as we have with this program, what's the actual flood impacts that communities and places have been experiencing this century, rather than perhaps what our previous modelling suggests.
Okay, thanks. I think Chris's point though isn't it, that even with the Environment Agency's flood maps, there's going to be millions more people at risk of flooding, and even if you throw a lot of money at this, you're not going to be able to protect, even half of those people from flooding really in the future. I mean, we are facing a massive crisis, aren't we, in terms of flooding in the future, whatever you do now.
Indeed. Um, Obviously, we journey in hope.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating this one, unfortunately.
I'm afraid not.
Yeah. Steph.
It's more of a comment than a question. I was interested that you said, Richard, that your background is economics. And so you're coming at this from the point of view of figures, money. Lisa and I last night met somebody from Flooded People. Do you know that
I,
organisation?
I do, yes.
And he came up with the point of the health problems that flooding brings. And I think some community that they're working with now, every single person who's flooded has PTSD. Now I work with people who with PTSD in my other life. Uh, and I know the costs of that in terms of their health and well-being. And I just think, why isn't there someone looking at it from that point of view as well as the economics? It seems an imbalance that is not just in your area, but is in every area.
Actually, you'd probably be surprised to hear, but we do have probably the most sophisticated, we have a more sophisticated understanding and building of valuing health and mental health damage to families, to households, uh, from flood risk than most NHS service investment decisions do. We include those costs. We've been including those costs in our cost benefit analysis since at least 2011. And it's an emerging field, obviously. So we do genuinely seek to include and reflect those damage costs because they are substantial.
Mm.
So Richard, just to be clear, you mentioned a figure of 650 million in the past 25 years in the four areas. So that's obviously the damage costs, all the insurance and, replacing, house contents and build it, uh, mending bridges and roads. Does that also include the health impacts as well?
Yeah.
So that's everything.
I mean, these are quite basic calculations. They're amalgamated calculations, and they're using formulas and examples and comparisons from elsewhere. I haven't gone out and don't run an audit of every
No, yeah.
single, obviously. Um, you see, one of the tools economists have is called assumption. You know, thank God they don't let us actually build bridges or actual defences. We only get to advocate for them, and that's right and proper.
Mm.
So yes, it would. We have those built into things like if we have damage to residential property, we have formulas that include those average mental health damage costs and damage to well-being of household. And if we are then able to identify what the makeup of the household is, or even the size of the house, the property, we'll use the property as a proxy, but the real measure is not the property damage, it's the household damage. So a lot of our economic tools are based on social costs, socio-economic costs, not on, we do obviously value the economic damage to a building, but as much of our damages are about social impact,
Okay. Oh, well,
socio-economic.
yeah. I'm actually surprised it's as low as that then. I'd think it'd be a lot higher than that. 600, in the 25 years, Storm Babette alone was just massive in terms of damage, let
Yeah.
alone the health
That's just
impact.
those 4 locations.
Yeah,
That's
no,
just
I
our four
realize that.
target
Yeah, yeah,
locations.
yeah, yeah.
Those four target locations are roughly 50 to 60% of the total number of properties damaged are in those locations and their immediate surrounds.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from anybody? No? Everybody's
It's a great question, Steph. It's a really good question. You know, it's you're absolutely on the money that it really, really matters that, and our understanding is still fairly crude.
Yeah, because even just translating pain and stress into money is a very difficult sum, I think, which is what you seem to be doing.
It's yeah. I mean, there's some bits of it that are difficult, and there are other elements where, to be honest, that's the best bit of doing it. That you know that you're reflecting the experiences that people have had in the pursuit of minimizing those experiences for them and for others. Makes the job worth doing.
Thanks. Thank you.
Kathy, you got a question.
Hello. I'm one of the, just a point first, I'm one of those volunteers that's been helping at Grassmore Country Park and at Homebrook Valley Park. So Don Catchment River Trust. So just thought I'd mention that. Now, my point is more about engineering for the future. So I've got a son who's a civil engineer. So obviously he's been trained up through the standard education system, and he's ended up being a geotechnical engineer, and he is doing some work on water related tasks. So the question really is, are we training up enough young people to meet these challenges of the future? Have we got the expertise out there? Is government promoting and supporting us having the skills to meet these huge challenges? And if they're not, what should be happening? Where have we got shortages in the skills gaps out there?
I'm not sure I know the answer, Kathy. I suspect your inclination that there might have been a shortfall is possibly true. I think there definitely are some initiatives going on. There's a new consortia of a set of universities in the East Midlands, but they're also linked to a number of other universities around the country. There's a new technical academy of flood risk that's been started up in Hull, I believe, or Holderness, or very close to Hull. I think I think there has been a bit of a realization that we weren't engaging enough young people and getting them trained in the relevant set of flood resilience and water resilience. But I, I get a sense that there's quite a will and interest from young people, and there's a degree to which in our education system it can be quite demand driven and demand responsive. I mean, students pay, so there's some degree to which, their money talks. And if they say they want to do environmental sciences and water civil engineering, then those courses will expand. Encourage them.
Mm. Can I ask the same question to Jackie as well? Whether there's
Yeah,
enough
please do.
people who are being encouraged to get interested in natural approaches to flood management, to get them out into places and show them what's possible, and engage them with the NFM type of solutions.
Yeah, and there's probably demand driven, but there's been such a change in the last 10 years or so. When I I did my degree and then a master's in environmental management as a mature student, and it was very difficult to move into the area because I wanted to not go into the sort of civil engineer side of it, more the green side. But that's just absolutely boomed in recent years. So demand is really high. But ICASP, so that's integrated Catchment Solutions Program, I think is the right word, but it's hosted by Leeds University. If you just put ICASP in, you would find that. Did a survey, I think it was last year, on green skills, and they found that that green skills are really lacking in our sector because it's been such a boom area. And yeah, I don't know that within the Environment Agency we're particularly taking we do take apprentices on, but I don't know that we are doing just for the green skills side of things. Somebody else might correct me, but in the flood world, I don't think we are. I actually manage one of the apprentices on our team, and he's really into the natural flood management side of it, so giving him lots of opportunities, but he does have to learn about all the other side of flood management as well. So yeah, in general, as Richard said, it was demand led. I think as the interest in the environment and certainly climate change ballooned, then the jobs grew in that, funding went that way. We've got lots more projects, and there is a shortage, a skill shortage, but I think it'll probably catch up.
Thank you. Just a final question for me. As a sort of community group, what should we be encouraging our local representatives, our mayoral authority, our county councils to be doing? What would you like them to be doing? I mean, obviously they're all strapped for cash. Not the mayor, she's got loads, but the councils haven't got much. What would be ideally would you like to see more of? If that's not too political a question.
Shall I go with that one, Jackie? uh, as I tried to explain with that last slide, there's a process now which the funding that we need from EMCCA is included in. That process is one of ratification by that authority, and that authority is made up in its board and in its investment committee of representatives of communities and place. You have a particular representative member on EMCCA's board, Councillor Tricia Gilby. She's the leader of the Borough Council. So I'm not suggesting that you do this, but if you were seeking effective representation, that might be the direction to go in.
Okay, thank you.
My ask, if you do, is that you do it in the most constructive, of course you would, way, and yeah, and the expectation here is that you can see from the slide, we appear to have quite strong support secured from the mayor and from EMCCA itself, and our gentle, engaging partnership working approach seems to be working quite well, I think. But it is a politicized process, and there's a bun fight that will go on for the money. Okay. I can't guarantee what happens.
Jackie, did you want to add anything to that, or before I bring Simon in?
For me, from the natural flood management side, it's just advocating for natural flood management, particularly not just politically. I think really we're quite lucky in your area. Derbyshire County Council are very much on board with natural flood management, and your local MP is very interested in natural flood management. But yeah, on the ground level, we're really going to need a lot of landowner support. We can't do everything on Derbyshire County Council's parks. That's not enough land. We're quite lucky with some of the moorland larger landowners in your area are quite progressive, should we say? But it's, for me, it really would be advocating with landowners and farmers have really had it hard for a very long time. I'm not blaming them, but the farming community is about getting support from them really to do things on their land.
Okay, thank you. We'll have one last question then. Simon, do you want to come in?
Hi, yeah. Yeah, and I'm not sure whether either of the speakers, whether this is their specialist area. I'm sure it probably isn't. But we live on Tapton Terrace in Chesterfield, next to the River Rother, and I don't know whether you're aware of the street. It's where the lady died in Storm Babette that made the national press. And our sort of big hope is a compulsory purchase order. We're hoping. I'm not really sure what I want to ask, but I'm interested to get your insight into whatever you do know about it. What is the process, for example, that will bring us to the point where, whether it's through feasibility studies or an assessment, how do you get to the point? How does Environment Agency and other, agencies get to the point where they declare that, the only way to protect these properties is a compulsory purchase order? Because most of several rivers in Chesterfield all seem to lead to Tapton Terrace, and it's generally accepted that the only way to protect it is to just level it, basically. So the process getting to that, and I know there's very few precedents for these sort of circumstances. I don't know whether you'd have any insights into how that would then pan out over time. Sorry, that's a bit vague.
It's not vague. I don't know. Richard, do you want me to go? Because I don't know the detail at all. I do know the detail of Tapton Terrace and what happened in Storm Babette. So good question, Simon. Thank you. But members of my team are working on this. So I kind of got the highlights. Just the Environment Agency are currently working with DEFRA colleagues and Chesterfield Borough Council on looking at a solution for you. And I've not got any detail on that, but there isn't a precedent within England, but yeah, I know that the team are working on that at the moment. I don't have the answer, sorry, and I think probably Richard doesn't either, because it's perhaps a bit further away from your work.
Who would be the best person to talk to? I think it's just the frustration, isn't it, of like not knowing what's happening, or finding out stuff from the press, and
Yeah, it's I suppose if you could send into our email address, let me just get it. So our team email address, this would be the best thing to do. Gosh, where's the chat?
Yeah,
found it now. I think as time goes on, you will get more announcements about it. It's just that at the moment the organisations are working together to look for the solution, including the solution that you've suggested. Sorry, can't be any firmer on that.
It's good to hear they're working together. Simon, did you want a follow-up?
How do you mean?
Sorry, did you want to ask anything else, or?
No, I mean, does the other chap, does he have any knowledge or insights?
Richard, do you know any more?
I think all I can say, Simon, is that my understanding is that all levels within the Environment Agency, all the way up to our chief executive, we share your hope that we can find a process by which a precedent setting, which it will be, approach can be progressed and delivered. And I don't know any more than that. And even if I did, it wouldn't be my place to say so, because I'm not involved in it.
So
but we share your hope.
So
Thanks.
am I right in thinking then that Tapton Terrace would be a precedent for England if it went ahead?
Yeah.
There's nowhere
Potentially, yes.
Okay. So it's quite a high profile case then.
I mean, it isn't in that there are individual property examples, but that's usually been about being able to construct a defence. And in Derby, the Our City, Our River scheme, which I am heavily and have been heavily involved in, there we had to premise the entire scheme on the basis of the demolition of 4 substantial commercial buildings within the city centre and setting the whole river back to make the space to deliver a scheme that could work. So it's not absolutely unprecedented, but it's definitely new territory. And, you know, inevitably that comes with caution.
Okay.
I'm going to shut up now because I'm going to get myself in trouble otherwise.
Sorry, can I just come back in, Simon? If you want to, what I can do is get the person that's actually working on this to contact you. So I don't know if you want to send me your email address or tell me it, or what's the best way? If I put my email address in here, or you can send it to that one there. That's South Yorkshire PSO 1, and just put for the attention of Jackie.
Is that in the chat? Is it?
Yeah. Is that? If not, then I know Steph and Lisa have got my
I've
email
got
address.
I've got it, Simon. I've got that email. I can also send Jackie your email as well.
Yeah,
well, that might be the best thing then. If you're happy for Lisa to send me your email address, then that's fine, and I'll.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Just a quick point that just occurred to me. The chap earlier put up, images. I think it was it Ripley Town Centre, and he was saying there's basically no space for projects. I'm just wondering if there's compulsory purchase orders. Whether it's a private house or a retail unit. This may be something that is probably going to have to be considered far more in the future. As things progress. It's thanks for your time though. That's great.
Yeah, thanks, Simon.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no more questions, we'll finish a little bit early. We're nearly at 8:15. So just to say big thank you to Richard and Jackie for giving up your time tonight and for your presentation and for all your information and expertise. And let's just keep in touch, and and if there are any news, anything we can do to help, anything you want us to promote, then just let us know. But thank you. And if you do react button at the bottom, you can do a little applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway,
thanks for giving us the opportunity. It's really worthwhile.
Yeah, thank you. All right, and good luck with it.
Thank you.
And, we'll look forward to the 8th of June.
We'll keep you informed.
Yeah.
Thanks. Of course we will.
Please do.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.